Hello and welcome, fellow bookworms and film fans. It's that time of the week again, and this week's episode is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Now, it was published in 1925, and I am aware that they've made it into several adaptations, but the adaptation that I shall be comparing it to is the 2013 version, starring Leonardo DiCaprio. Now, I am aware, obviously, there is a 1974 as well, which I did thoroughly enjoy. But obviously I will compare as normal 4 things. So I'll be looking at plot, I'll be seeing if I recommend the film, seeing if I recommend the book, and overall how well did the film take from the book. Now, first up as always is the plot. So both the book and the film are narrated by Nick Carraway, who is he's our main character but also not our main character. Obviously Gatsby's the main character, but Nick Carraway is kind of a pseudo character. Now the film starts straight away with the story of Gatsby. But in the book you get a little background of Nick first as he's working his way up to get to Gatsby. Now, we come across the Buchanans first, in both the film and the book. As I said, it does go into the story of Gatsby straight away in the film, but obviously to get to the story of Gatsby you have to meet the Buchanans first, Tom and Daisy. Now, we're also introduced much the same way to Tom and Daisy as we are in the film as we are in the book. So Tom is coming in from playing polo. We get quite a vivid description of him. Then they go into the house and we're introduced to Daisy, and she's got a friend as well, Jordan Baker. There's curtains whipping around. She's lounging on the sofa. And that's sort of like how we are introduced to Daisy and Tom. And that's also when we're introduced to Jordan as well, who sort of plays a role in getting these characters all interacting with each other. Now, in both, Nick does stay for dinner, and then at this point we're alerted about Tom's mistress. Now, his mistress is, as we find out later on, in the garage, but she's calling during dinner, and I think obviously everybody knows about it because Daisy seems very adamant that, you know, she shouldn't be calling here, and then she tries to put on this false air of happiness. So then after that, Nick then goes home, and we get our first glimpse of Gatsby. He sees Gatsby at the end of his pier, sort of searching out towards the green light. It's quite dark, and Nick has this feeling that he's searching for something, which we find out later he is. This is a greater love story than Romeo and Juliet. So what I love as well is you still get the whole symbology with the eyes. Now, the eyes are looking over the bleakness of the area. They're looking over everything. They're sort of like gods are seeing what you do. And you get this in the film as you do in the book, which I do appreciate because it does play quite a big part. Now, we now come across the mistress. We now meet the mistress. Now, in the books, the only thing is in the book she is described as being thicker set. So I would imagine a sort of like more my shape, quite curvy, you know, a little bit larger, maybe an hourglass figure. In both films, obviously we're looking at the more recent one, but in both films as well, she's a very slim woman. And I don't know why, but that always upset me just a little bit. I mean, it's just such a simple little thing, but she's always seen as a slimmer woman. Now, they do travel to New York together. Nick ends up being dragged along with Tom, and Myrtle is her name. And they go into a New York apartment to cavort, as it were. Now, in both as well, she gets a dog. Tom buys her a dog. Tom seems to be besotted with Myrtle. But obviously he's never going to leave Daisy because he's a man of power. He's a man of wealth. He's a man of, you know, social class. One has a wife and a mistress, obviously. Now, in this, Nick mentions that this is the second time in his life that he got completely and utterly wasted. Completely off his head. And he mentions that, to be fair, it's quite an illusion. He doesn't quite understand what's going on. So, you know, we get that feeling from the film as we do in the book. And then this is where he starts hearing rumours about who Gatsby is and where he came from and all of that. And that's when he starts to get interested in this gentleman. So it is a impromptu party that Myrtle invites some friends. So in both as well, you see Tom's underlying anger because Myrtle starts going, Daisy, 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 you know, I can say a name. And Tom lashes out and hits her. So we can see now that, you know, he's this sports guy, he's this husband, he's this, you know, lover, but also he has got this anger to him. And then the party's over, so everybody goes home. So then in both as well, you get a feel for the decadence of the parties at Gatsby's. It's described in great detail in the film. It's just magnificently shown. But also Nick is the only one that ever gets personally invited to a party at Gatsby, which he makes a point of saying that, you know, he thought he was the only one that's ever been personally invited, and he was. So he gets invited to the party, and he goes in and he bumps into Jordan, and then he starts going, well, I've been invited, I'm trying to find the host, can't find the host anywhere, ends up going through all these little things. In the book, he seems to fit in more with these people. In the film, he fits in with Jordan, but then these other people are just like, a man of your class can't be with this woman. And it's a bit rude, but that's the kind of feel that you get. So in both, Nick is just talking and trying to find out who his host is, and then his host reveals himself. Because in the film, he announces himself to Nick by turning with a glass of champagne and fireworks going off behind him, which I thought, I love that imagery, I really do. But in the book, he's mentioning to someone that he'd love to go on a hydroplane. They start making plans, and then the guy turns out to be Gatsby. So it's got a little bit underwhelmed, but it's quite a nice entrance. I love both entrances though, I must admit. Slight difference, but I do love it. So then they make plans to go on the hydroplane in the morning. Gatsby then pulls Jordan away because he has urgent business to discuss with her. And when they come out, Jordan tells Nick to call her so she can share what she learned. A little gossip, that one. Now, in the book, Jordan and Nick start hanging out together throughout the summer, and they start seeing a lot more of each other. In the film, you don't really get this sense, and you don't really see it as much. Now, Gatsby appears to have taken a shine to Nick. In the book, Nick seems to be more derisive to Gatsby. He doesn't quite like him at first. He grows to love him as a person. But in the film, it's almost straight away that Nick seems to like him. So Gatsby appears to have taken a shine to Nick and ends up calling on him to lunch in the city. So in the car ride, Gatsby then tells Nick the truth of his past. Well, him many truths of Gatsby. Nick doesn't believe a word of it, but he goes along with it anyway. And then they go and meet a acquaintance of Gatsby that gives them a little bit more insight into who Gatsby is and what Gatsby does. Again, it's little things and you're never quite sure if it's true or not. And then at this lunch, Nick sees Tom and goes to introduce Tom to Gatsby, but Gatsby's vanished into thin air, which is a bit strange, but Gatsby's like that. He's a bit like Batman. You turn around and he's gone. But while he's at lunch, Gatsby does ask Gatsby does ask Nick to go to dinner with Jordan, to go to lunch with Jordan, as Jordan's got a favour to ask. And so in the book, Nick gets really annoyed because he's like, well, why can't you just ask me? In the film, he's kind of understanding about it and doesn't mind. So then you go to tea with Jordan. And this is where you learn about his past love with Daisy. And that bit is true, it's 100% true. That does not change that story. And so because of that, Jordan then says Gatsby wants you, Nick, to invite Daisy round for tea. So Nick ponders it over and thinks, yeah, what's the harm? Goes back to his house, and when he goes back to the house, you've got Gatsby loitering with excuses. Oh, we can do this, we can do that, we can go out to this. And Nick turns around and goes, no, I will invite her. It's a favour. Gatsby then tries to get him into the dodgy dealings that he's doing, but Nick turns around and goes, it's a complete favour, you don't have to do anything for me. And then you see the most adorable little lovesick Gatsby. Oh my god, it's so cute. So he then sends someone over the next day to mow the lawn. He sends flowers round. In the film, he goes one step further and has cakes as well. And he sort of like, he turns up and then at 2 minutes to when Daisy's supposed to arrive, he goes, no one's coming, that's it. And then you hear this motor car and a knock at the door. So Nick goes and gets Daisy, brings her into the room, and Gatsby has vanished into thin air. Told you he does that. So anyway, they sit down and Nick's going, where's Gatsby gone? I thought I'd got her round for this, him round for this. And then suddenly there's a knock at the door and Gatsby just happens to have walked in, which I thought was really cute. So then the two of them, Daisy and Gatsby, obviously see each other. They start going starstruck. Daisy can't believe what she's seeing. Gatsby has finally got, his woman back, the one that he's loved and yearned for years. and they sit and they just talk blissfully unaware of anything else. Now at this point, Nick kind of makes himself scarce and goes stands out in the rain so that they can have a bit of alone time. Then he comes back and goes, okay, you know, we really need to to be moving this along. So then Gatsby goes, come to my house. So all three of them go to his house, and Gatsby is measuring everything against Daisy, and you can see in the love and the affection that he shows her. Again, this is exactly the same in the book and the film. And Daisy is blown away by everything. And he goes, oh, I've got this and I've got this. And it's so sweet. And then, so you've got all of this going on, and I think it's really adorable. Now, in the book at this point, we get told of his actual past. We don't find that out in the film until miles later. But you get this feel from Gatsby, and you can feel it in the film as you do in the book, that Gatsby truly, truly loves her and has never stopped loving her. So after this, in the book, the friendship seems to cool a little bit. I mean, there wasn't much of a friendship anyway, but it seems to cool a little bit as Nick is going around with Jordan. And in the film, it's because Gatsby is starting to go around with Daisy. Now, in the book, Tom comes over to Gatsby's house to announce he will be coming to the next party because he wants to sort of like have a look at this competition. So then he comes to this next party with Daisy. In the film, they just show up. But Daisy, in both, does steal off with Gatsby for some alone time during this party. She doesn't much enjoy the party, but she does enjoy Gatsby's company. And that's when Gatsby realises that these parties that he was throwing for Daisy all these years to try and get her to come round were never going to entice her anyway. So Tom, however, has a suspicion that Daisy is probably going around with Gatsby because something seems off. So he makes this his mission now to find out who Gatsby is, where he got his money. So all Gatsby's wanting at this point is for Daisy to admit to Tom that she never loved him, and he wants her to leave him so that they can go off and have a wedding and, you know, live together. He doesn't want to run off with Daisy. That's not what he wants. He wants her to be wedded to him. He wants that commitment and that love. So then Gatsby and Tom get invited over to to Daisy and Tom's house on an extremely hot day. Daisy ends up saying that she loves Gatsby, almost with her eyes, and Tom picks up on this. And so out of nervousness, Daisy suggests they go to town, which they do. So Gatsby and Daisy share Tom's car, and Tom, Nick and Jordan share Gatsby's car. Then Tom regales them with what he learned about Gatsby, like how he made his money in the bootlegging trade and all of that. And on the way to town, they stop at the garage that Tom's mistress lives at. So they top up the gas, and now Myrtle seems desperate at this point as she stares out the window because Tom finds out that she's going to be moved away from him pretty much in the next few days because Myrtle's husband has found out that she's having an affair. He doesn't know who with, but, you know, he's got wise to that. They get a room at the plaza, and everything comes to a head. Gatsby and Daisy admit their feelings. Daisy admits that she did love Tom at some point. Gatsby informs Tom that he will look after Daisy. Nick and Jordan feeling very awkward in the situation. Gatsby then loses his temper at Tom. Daisy then sees this and goes crawling back to Tom, pleads for it to be over. So she and Gatsby leave in Gatsby's car, and then Nick turns around and goes, oh, it's my 30th birthday. What a day. Now, Myrtle runs out to stop Gatsby's car, believing Tom to be the driver, but gets struck down and dies instantly. So when Tom drives past, he mourns her, but puts everything on Gatsby in the film, including Myrtle's infidelity. In the book, he just says it isn't his car at this point. So Nick's had enough of everyone at this point, stays outside, and then, you know, everyone's gone home, and he stays outside to have a taxi, wait for a taxi. And while doing so, Gatsby hails him from the shrubs. Again, this is pretty much the same in the book as it is in the film. Now, there's a mini confrontation between Nick and Gatsby as Nick realises then that Daisy was driving Gatsby's car, not Gatsby. So then Gatsby stands vigil at Daisy's house until the early mornings, until the early hours, but gets nothing. So he goes back to his house and he sits with Nick and he finally tells him about his past. Now, as I said, in the book we found this out earlier, but Gatsby has now told him. In the film, this is the first time we find it out. So morning comes and Gatsby wants to go for a swim. Nick mentions that he has places to be and leaves him to it, but then rings back to hear from him. Now in the film, he hears Gatsby get shot. In the book, he gets told that he cannot get through, and then he realizes that something's not right, and then he goes around and discovers the body. Now in the book, Nick cuts ties completely with Jordan, and we also hear of the aftermath of Myrtle's death, including Wilson trying to figure out who it was that run her down, which he does eventually through Tom. So Wilson finds Gatsby and kills him. Then he turns the gun on himself, and Nick helps discover the bodies. In both, he discovers the bodies. In the aftermath of his death, Nick realizes that no one cared for Gatsby or knew him. So then Daisy and Tom have left. Everybody that used to attend the parties are a no-show. Now in the book, Gatsby's dad arrives, and we're led to believe he's dead in the film. And Nick keeps pushing for acquaintances to come to the funeral, but nobody wants to come. Whereas in the film, it just shows Gatsby surrounded by photographers and no one else, save Nick. Now again, we see the aftermath in the book of his death, and we get more of a sense of his father and see how barren his funeral really was. Now the film ends with Nick completing his book about Gatsby, and after putting in words how he felt during that time, it's over. The book ends, however, with Nick saying his goodbyes to Jordan, then seeing Tom and realising it was him who put Wilson onto Gatsby. Then he says one final goodbye to Gatsby's house before going off to another city. Now, the film narrative was so close to the book narrative, apart from that ending there, which was quite different. It kept in the little interactions between main characters. It showed us the whole world almost perfectly. It kept the symbology that I loved about the book. And apart from a little few changes or things missing, I believe they did justice to the plot. So I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Now, the film is everything that you want Gatsby to be. He is absurdly awkward around Daisy, but he's also very assured of himself in the parties. He's a fantastic actor as Leonardo DiCaprio. Love him as Gatsby. Now, you also, as I said, you still get the symbology. You get the eyes, you get the little blue-green light blinking at the end of the harbour, you get the decadence, you get the, it's beautifully done. And I love the fact that the director put a slightly modern twang on the 1920s classic. You get this from the vibrant tones of the film and the music that's both the modern songs but then a classic score to go with it. It just makes this film absolutely great. And the song A Little Party Never Hurt Nobody from Fergie is stuck in my head because of that film. Now, I would recommend this film to absolutely anybody who loves classics and anybody that's looking for a nice couple of hours to kill. It is completely a 9 out of 10 for me. Now, the book. I read this book when I was at school for English, good old Kid Brooke out there. And it is one of the few books that stuck with me that I did keep throughout the years, and I still do read it for pleasure. Now, I still see everything and I still compare all of the symbology while I'm reading the book again, because obviously that's what we were taught. So I am still doing the symbology in my head, even though it's, I'm trying to switch myself off. So it is second nature to me now when I'm reading the book, but it is such a lovely take of love, and also showing the class, the divide between new money and old money. And enjoy this book so much every time, and I would recommend this book to anybody to read, because, anyone in English lit, anyone otherwise, if you're just looking for a good book to read, I would recommend this book. It gets a 9 out of 10 for me. Now, overall, the film does stick very close to the book. The characters are the same, the setting is the same. The plot is pretty much the same. As I said, there's a couple of changes, and apart from obviously Myrtle being a bit more curvy in the book and a bit more feisty in the book, I absolutely love this. I think the director did an absolute gem of a film with this book, and so I'm going to give overall this Gatsby adaptation an 8 out of 10. Now, this is my own opinion, of course. I'm happy to hear if any of you agree or disagree. If there are any book to film adaptations that you'd like me to do, leave it below in the comments. Don't forget to join me next week for my contented narrative around Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. And don't forget to click subscribe to this channel so you're alerted whenever a new a new episode comes out. But until then, remember to always keep it contento.